All right, so welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. We always love getting your suggestions for topics, and this one comes straight from the Canada subreddit. We're going deep into the BC provincial elections, or more specifically, allegations of non-citizen voting. There's this whole discussion thread going on about an article on cbc.ca. It's really interesting how people are reacting to it all. I mean, think about it. Even just the allegation itself, whether it's true or not, has stirred up so much debate.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It really has. I think it's tapping into some anxieties people have around elections and, maybe even democracy itself. So to kick things off, the leader of the BC Conservatives is out there saying non-citizens might have voted, influencing the results. But here's the catch. He's admitting there's no hard evidence, no smoking gun.
Oh, wow. So that's got to be fueling the fire online. I bet people are jumping to conclusions left and right.
You guessed it.
Yeah.
The skepticism is off the charts. Lots of folks making comparisons to, similar claims we've seen down south.
Oh, really? Like with the U.S. elections?
Exactly. Some people in the thread are even calling those making the allegations maple maggots.
Huh. Maple maggots. That's certainly a term. So it seems like this whole thing is getting pretty heated. What are some of the other reactions you're seeing?
Well, it's a real mixed bag.
Mm-hmm.
Some are just flat out dismissing the whole thing. They point to the fact that the D.C. Conservatives lost the election and say it's just sour grapes.
Ah, the classic sore loser argument.
Right, but then you have others who are genuinely concerned. They're worried that even a small number of fraudulent votes could have tipped the scales, especially since some races were really close.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Every vote counts, especially in a tight race.
Absolutely, and that uncertainty, that doubt, is what makes these types of allegations so powerful.
Yeah.
Whether they're true or not, just the act of questioning the legitimacy of the vote can really damage public trust.
That's kind of scary when you think about it. I mean, it's like the foundation of our democracy is built on trust in the system. What about the actual claims themselves? Are people buying it?
While some are clinging to personal anecdotes, they claim they know non-citizens who supposedly voted.
Oh, wow. So they're speaking from personal experience.
Or so they say. But then others are pushing back hard. They're bringing up Canada's strict voter registration process and how it's designed to prevent that kind of fraud.
Right. It's not exactly easy to just walk in and vote if you're not eligible.
It really highlights this challenge we face with information online. We're constantly bombarded with claims and counterclaims, and it's tough to sort out what's true.
Especially when everyone has their own biases. It's like we all have these filters that shape how we see the world and interpret information.
You got it. And those filters can make us more likely to accept information that confirms what we already believe, even if it's not the whole truth.
Speaking of cherry-picking information, there was one commenter who brought up a past incident with the Liberal Party admitting to voter fraud. They were trying to use it as proof that these new allegations might be true.
Yeah, I saw that one too. But upon closer inspection, it turned out they were talking about a party leadership election, not a general election, which are totally different.
Oh, so it's a classic case of taking things out of context to fit a narrative.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it just goes to show how easily misinformation can spread, even if it's unintentional.
Sometimes it feels like we're all trying to piece together a puzzle, but with half the pieces missing, and it's so easy to get caught up in those missing pieces. But as engaged citizens, how do we sift through all of this noise and make sense of it all?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's something we'll keep digging into as we go deeper. We're going to look at the impact these allegations might have on Canadian democracy, the whole debate around free speech versus spreading false info, and most importantly, give you some tools to think critically about the information that's out there.
I think we could all use a little more of that these days. So stay tuned, everyone. We're just getting started.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit, look beyond just this one election and these specific allegations. This whole situation, it really gets at this bigger problem we're facing, misinformation and the damage it's doing to public trust, not just in Canada, but everywhere, globally. It's a huge concern.
It really does feel like a virus sometimes, doesn't it? Spreading everywhere, infecting our ability to even talk about important issues. Like, it just shuts down any kind of honest conversation.
That's a really spot-on analogy. Misinformation is like a virus. It thrives in places where critical thinking is low and where emotions run high, and that's where social media comes in. Think about how those platforms are designed. They want to keep us hooked.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I know I spend way too much time scrolling sometimes.
We all do, and it's not by accident. Those algorithms are designed to amplify content to trigger strong emotions, whether it's outrage, fear, excitement, you name it.
So you're saying the very way these platforms work actually makes us more vulnerable to misinformation.
Absolutely. It's not necessarily malicious or anything. It's just that the algorithms prioritize engagement over accuracy. And unfortunately, misinformation tends to be more emotionally charged, so it spreads faster.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like junk food for the brain.
Hmm.
Easy to consume, gives you a quick hit of dopamine, but ultimately not good for you. So in this kind of environment where misinformation is spreading like wildfire, how do we become more critical thinkers?
Well, it starts with awareness,
Hmm.
recognizing how these platforms work,
Yeah.
and being aware of our own biases.
Yeah.
They can color our perceptions. One of the biggest red flags to watch out for is the source of the information. Is it coming from a reputable news organization, a university, a government agency?
So like places with some credibility.
Exactly. But if it's from some random social media post or a blog with a clear agenda, or, those websites known for spreading conspiracy theories, that's when you got to be extra cautious.
Okay, so it's like checking the credentials before we accept something as truth.
Yeah.
Right on. But it's not just about the source. We also got to look at the evidence itself. Is it based on facts, statistics, research? Or is it just anecdotes, opinions, emotional appeals?
There's that saying, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Someday, if someone's making a really bold claim, especially one that could have serious consequences, we need to demand some serious proof. And don't be afraid to ask questions, challenge assumptions, and seek out different perspectives.
That's good advice. Something else that came up in that Reddit thread was the timing of these allegations. They came out right after the BC Conservatives lost the election. So some people are saying it's just sour grapes, while others are wondering if it's a deliberate attempt to undermine the results.
Yeah, that's a valid question, and it points to a broader issue. The politicization of truth. It's a worrying trend. When political figures use accusations, especially about elections, to further their own goals, it just erodes public trust even more and makes it harder to have productive conversations.
It's like this constant cloud of suspicion hanging over everything. How can we, as regular citizens, even tell the difference between legitimate concerns and just political attacks?
It's not easy, but it takes being extra vigilant. Focus on the evidence, not just the rhetoric. Are the claims backed up by facts? Are they being investigated by independent bodies? Are there credible experts who agree with those claims?
Okay, so we need to do our homework, basically. Don't just take things at face value.
Exactly. Now, another interesting debate that emerged in the thread was about free speech versus, consequences for spreading misinformation.
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? On one hand, we want open dialogue, freedom of expression, but then there's the potential harm that false information can cause, especially around elections.
It's a classic tension in democracies, finding that balance.
Hmm.
How do we protect individual rights while also safeguarding our institutions and preventing the spread of harmful lies? There's no easy answer, and different societies approach it in different ways.
Right, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. I remember one commenter said spreading misinformation should be a crime, like yelling, "Fire" in a crowded theater, because false claims can have real-world consequences. Violence, distrust, and even, like they said, the erosion of democracy itself.
It's a powerful argument for sure, and one that's gaining traction, but it also brings up some tricky legal and ethical questions. Like, how do we define misinformation? Who gets to decide what's true and what's false? And where do we draw the line between free speech and dangerous speech?
Yeah, it's a fine line to walk.
Exactly. And it's a conversation that needs to involve everyone. Lawmakers, tech companies, journalists, academics, and most importantly, us, the citizens. We need to figure out what kind of information ecosystem we want and what role, if any, regulation should play.
So it's about creating a system that works for everyone, one that protects free speech while also preventing the spread of harmful lies.
Right, we're at a crucial point. We got to figure out how to navigate this new information landscape responsibly and ethically.
The stakes are high, that's for sure.
They really are. The health of our democracies depends on it. We have to be able to tell truth from falsehood, engage in respectful dialogue, and hold those who spread misinformation accountable.
So, as we've been talking about all of this, the allegations, the Reddit thread, the whole mess, I keep wondering, what does this all actually mean, for the average Canadian voter?
Well, it's a question we should all be asking ourselves. It really boils down to trust.
Yeah.
Trust in our democratic systems. When that trust starts to erode, well, it weakens the whole foundation of our society.
It's kind of like if you have a crack in the foundation of your house, if you ignore it, the whole structure could become unstable, right?
Exactly. And rebuilding that trust, well, it's not easy. It takes transparency, accountability, and a genuine effort to address legitimate concerns.
One of the comments that really struck me in the thread was someone saying that even without evidence, these allegations could discourage people from voting. Like they felt their vote wouldn't even matter if the system was rigged.
That's a dangerous path to go down. And unfortunately, it's a sentiment we're seeing more and more these days. When people feel like their voices aren't being heard or that the system is against them, they just give up. They
Yeah.
become disillusioned. And that's a recipe for disaster, for democratic erosion.
So how do we fight back against that? How do we get people re-engaged in the political process? How do we restore their faith in democracy?
It's a big challenge, no doubt. Yeah. Education is definitely a key part of it. We need to give people the tools to think critically about information, to spot misinformation, and to understand how the whole electoral process works.
So like giving them a roadmap to navigate the political landscape.
Exactly. But it can't just be about individual responsibility. We need systemic changes, too. We need to hold social media platforms accountable for spreading misinformation, promote media literacy, and make sure our elections are run with transparency and proper oversight.
There was this one commenter who suggested making Election Day a national holiday. Their thinking was it would encourage more people to vote, like sending a message that voting is important,
Yeah.
a civic duty, something to celebrate.
I like that idea. It's about creating a culture where voting is valued and seen as an act of citizenship.
Yeah, kind of like a gathering for a family meal. Everyone comes together, shares a common experience, reaffirms those bonds.
That's a great way to put it. At the end of the day, democracy is about collective action. It's about working together to shape our future.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into these allegations, the reactions, and what it all means for Canadian democracy, is there one key message you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. Democracy is precious, but it's also fragile. It needs our attention, our participation. We need to think critically, be engaged, and never stop fighting for truth and fairness.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We can't afford to be complacent. We need to be informed, engaged, and vigilant, always working to protect the values that make democracy work.
That's right. And remember, this conversation doesn't end here. Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep those dialogues going.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of Canadian politics. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged.